Welcome back to Hot Movies. Today I will recap a drama romance film, Little Children, which was released in the year 2006. Before starting the recap, make sure to subscribe and like this video. The film opens in Boston, where the news programs are covering a man named Ronnie. He is a sexual offender who has been freed from prison after having completed his sentence, which is why Boston residents are concerned about their children. The following day, we are seeing a woman named Sarah. She attempts to converse with the other woman in the park. Sadly, she is never able to speak with them. She takes her 3-year-old daughter Lucy to the park to play with other children. Regardless of the fact that is a terrible failure since she does not play with other children, then Sarah brings her child to the park such that she can get out of her house as she is losing her mind. Sarah was distraught over her life and couldn't concentrate on her daughter. However, the other ladies believe Sarah is a bad mother. At about this time, Sarah notices Brad, a law student. He comes here with his kid, Aaron. Furthermore, Sarah realizes that every woman in the park is hoping for Brad to arrive for them to see him. Unfortunately, he was unhappy with his life. He spends the entire day caring for his son, and then when his wife returns home, Brad believes that his efforts have been in vain. They love one another, yet they rarely get near or make sex. Brad leaves the house each night to study. But he spends all of his time to watch some guys skate, and he desires he could be as young as all of those boys. Brad and Sarah begin speaking the following day at the park while playing with their children. Brad informs Sarah, without reluctance, that his wife works and earns money, and also that he aspires to be a lawyer and can finish his studies. Sarah comes to realize that Brad feels isolated, wishes to speak with someone. As he is about to leave, Sarah feels he should remain a little longer, which is why she says Brad, all the ladies in the park had bet on she can't be friends with and get closer to Brad. Brad and Sarah began kissing to win the bet, shocking all the women in the park. Sarah cannot really forget Brad after that and couldn't stop thinking about him. Brad, while on the other hand, was reminiscing about his kiss with Sarah, even though he knows his wife Katie is more beautiful than Sarah. As Brad gets to the park the next morning, he doesn't see anybody and discovers that nobody is coming. Brad does not meet Sarah till a few days. Afterwards at night, Brad joins his friend Larry, a policeman, and then brings him to play rugby with his buddies. Brad eventually arrives home after the game. A woman discovers that Larry visits Ronnie's residence every night and humiliates him. Sarah, on the other hand, was not content with spending all day looking for her child. Neither was her husband Richard, who suffers from an addiction. He cannot even concentrate on his job, and his relationship with Sarah was shattered as a result of his addiction. After a few days, Sarah follows her heart and brings her daughter to a swimming pool where Brad frequently goes. Sarah and Brad met regularly following that day, while their children became friends. Likewise, Brad and Sarah began to get to know one another and fell in love. They do not wish to ruin their reputation in front of others, therefore they keep their affair to friends. Another day, Ronnie is swimming with youngsters at the pool. Initially, no one knows or sees him. After a while, Sarah, Brad, and other parents notice Ronnie and remove their children from the pool out of terror. The cops then take Ronnie away, which he dislikes. Then after, heavy rain falls, which is why Brad and Sarah go over to Sarah's house with both the kids. Whereas, Brad begins searching through the books and notices his photo in one of them. He then loses control and begins kissing Sarah, and they ultimately get intimate. Ronnie, on the other hand, is living with his mother, who feels that in order to heal her son's condition, she must search a woman for him. However, Ronnie is aware that he is sick and a sex offender, and in order to please his mother, he decides to go on a date with a lady, Sheila. His mom, on the other hand, was being blamed for his actions. She desired to restore Ronnie's character in the eyes of the world. Brad was content the next day to be with Sarah and to play football with his pals. Katie's mom, in contrast, advises her that Brad spends more time outside, which will ruin their relationship. Furthermore, Brad was becoming popular among Larry's friends, which irritated Larry as he thought himself inferior to Brad, and that night he tells Brad that his wife had left him. Brad then tells him about Ronnie's swimming pool episode. When Larry learns of this, he becomes enraged and rushes to Ronnie's house, where he attempts to beat Ronnie in the presence of his mother. Ronnie's mother then reminds Larry that in the shopping center, Larry did something cruel to a child that Ronnie never would have committed. Larry begins to leave without uttering anything when he heard this. Larry reveals Brad in the car that many years ago, he went to bring somebody to the shopping center, and accidentally shot a 13-year-old boy. He was told that a youngster was carrying a real gun, but after the boy died, he discovered that he was holding a plastic toy gun that he was playing with. He became so depressed as a result that he had to quit from his police officer job. The next day, Sarah spent all of her time with Brad, and they became physically closer. Moreover, her friend was aware of her relationship and would often mock her for it. Sarah, on the other hand, knew she was looking for happiness and was thrilled with her affair with Brad. That's why she didn't feel remorseful. With the passing of time, Sarah was madly in love with Brad and couldn't bear the thought of him with his wife, who was far more beautiful than her. She wished to have a life of freedom in which she could live with Brad and no one would react to their relationship, but this was impossible. After a few days, Ronnie goes out on a date with Sheila and she has been in depression for so many years. She informs Ronnie about her issues, and the two begin to like each other. Everything was going quite well until Sheila learned Ronnie's secret. Sheila then never meets Ronnie again after learning that he enjoys harassing children physically. Sarah, in contrast, has become so engrossed in her extramarital relationship that she has forgotten about her daughter. Erin informs Katie one night how Brad spends a lot of time with Lucy and her mother, which is why she began to question Brad. Katie asked Sarah and Richard to dinner at her house one night. She realized there at time that Sarah and Brad were closer than she believed. However, Brad was certain that Katie did not suspect him, and the next day Katie invited her mother to live in her home. Katie's mother was generally stuck with Brad and accompanied him wherever he went, so Brad couldn't really meet Sarah. Besides that, Brad was just left alone to participate in football game. Sarah seizes the opportunity and arrives to the football game to see him. They begin kissing, and Brad confesses to Sarah that he has never been happier, to which Sarah responds that their relationship has no significance and is absolutely incorrect. When Brad hears this, he says something Sarah has been eager to hear for a long time. He says to her that he wishes to begin a fresh life with her and spend more time with her, and that he wants to flee with her from this place. As Sarah hears this, she is overjoyed and decides to flee with him. Larry was expecting for Brad to show up at the same time, and then when he didn't show up to meet him, Larry rushed to Ronnie's house and began shouting. Ronnie's mother arrives, and her neighbors phone the police to have him taken from her home. Ronnie's mother slipped while coping with Larry and began having a heart attack. After a little time, the ambulance carries Ronnie's mother to the hospital, and the cops arrest Larry nonetheless. Larry was released from custody the same night. Ronnie, on the other hand, was looking for his mother at the hospital until he learned of her mother's death. As Ronnie returns home, he finds a letter by his mother asking him to be a better person. After Ronnie read the letter, he couldn't stop himself and fell to pieces. Brad and Sarah had arranged to meet at the park and fleeing together the same night. Before leaving, Brad walks to his son Aaron and shows him how much he loves him. He then writes a letter to his wife explaining why he left and decides to deliver it to her after he has gone. Sarah then walks to the park with her daughter Lucy to wait for Brad, while Larry walks to Ronnie's house to say sorry for his mom's death. Likewise, Brad begins heading toward the park. Meanwhile, Ronnie arrives at the park before Brad. Sarah is horrified when she sees him. Brad, on the other hand, was late when he noticed those lads gearing up, and since they told him to skateboard with them, so he started skating and entirely forgot about Sarah in the process. Whereas Sarah was terrified of Ronnie. As Lucy notices Ronnie sobbing alone, she rushes over to comfort him, and then Lucy vanishes. As Sarah learns this, she has forgotten about Brad and begins looking for Lucy. Once she sees Lucy after a time, she begins to cry in front of her, and understands that living with Brad is not a fate, and it is a wonderful dream that will never come true. She expressed remorse to Lucy, and returned her home. Brad tripped while skating and became unconscious when he awoke. He was injured, and understood he wanted to see his wife Katie. That's why he asked those boys to throw the letter he previously written for Katie. While Larry comes to the park to say sorry to Ronnie, he confesses him that he owns himself for his mother's death, and that he is sorry for troubling him every night. When Larry discovers that Ronnie has injured himself, he immediately picks him up and drives him to the hospital. There Katie also meets Brad. Furthermore, Larry, Brad, Katie, and Sarah have all made errors in the past, and during that night, they all realized that they needed to go on and strive to improve the future. They had to start somewhere, and the film ends here. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos. See you next time in another Hot Movies video.